What if your entire fortune, everything you've worked for, could vanish overnight unless you marry a complete stranger in just 30 days? That's exactly what happened to Liam Hartley, a powerful CEO forced into an impossible decision. But when he finds Clara, a sharp, mysterious woman living on the streets, what begins as a cold contract explodes into a whirlwind of secrets, betrayal, and an unexpected fight for truth. But here's the real twist. She's hiding a past that could either save him or destroy them both. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, give this video a like, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's jump into the story. The rain tapped gently against the tall windows of Hartley Enterprises, blurring the view of the bustling city below. Inside the high-rise office, Liam Hartley sat motionless, his jaw clenched tight. His usually calm and calculating mind was spinning. Everything he had worked for, everything his family name stood for, now hung by a thread because of one line in a will. The lawyer, an older man with a tired voice, folded the papers in front of him and looked across the room at Liam. "That's the full reading, Mr. Hartley," he said, clearing his throat. "As stated, the condition to inherit the estate and remain CEO is that you must marry within 30 days. Liam didn't flinch, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the sleek conference table. He stared straight ahead, his thoughts louder than the rain outside. 30 days? To get married? It sounded like something out of a cheap romance novel, not the final request of his father, Charles Hartley, the man who built a tech empire from nothing. But Charles had always been unpredictable, even in death. "I suppose this is his last power play," Liam muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The lawyer offered a sympathetic nod. "Your father believed you needed balance. He hoped this condition might lead you to a different kind of success." Liam stood, his 6-foot frame tense, his dark eyes filled with a storm that matched the sky outside. This isn't about balance, it's control. Still, the facts remained. If he didn't find someone willing to marry him by the end of the month, the board would replace him, and his family's company would fall into the hands of people who only saw dollar signs. The pressure was suffocating. Over the next week, Liam tried to make sense of it all. He met with lawyers, strategists, and even a matchmaker. Nothing felt right. The women he met seemed more interested in his net worth than in him. Some tried too hard to impress. Others looked at him like a paycheck in a suit. He felt like he was interviewing job applicants, not potential life partners. Each day that passed made him more anxious. One evening, unable to clear his mind, Liam drove through the city, winding through streets he rarely visited. It was far from the glass towers and designer stores he was used to. These streets were filled with noise, neon lights, and people just trying to survive. Somewhere near the edge of the city, he spotted her. She was sitting under an old bus shelter wrapped in a faded coat, reading a book by the light of a flickering street lamp. Her hair was pulled back loosely, and her face showed signs of tiredness, but her eyes were focused, alive. She didn't look up when he pulled over. She kept reading. Curious, Liam stepped out into the cold night air and approached her slowly. "Excuse me," he said. She looked up, cautious but not afraid. Her voice was calm. "Can I help you?" "I don't know yet," he replied honestly, "but I might have a proposition." Her name was Clara Bennett. At first she laughed when he told her the story. The will, the deadline, the marriage requirement. "You're serious?" she asked, brows raised. "I am," Liam answered. "And you want to marry a stranger? Just to keep your company?" "Yes. I'll provide a place to stay, financial support and protection. 1 year, then you can walk away." Clara studied him. There was no charm in his voice, no fake promises, just cold, blunt honesty. "Why me?" she asked quietly. Liam paused. "Because you're the first person I've met who didn't pretend." She was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded, just once. "All right. 1 year." The next morning, in a quiet courthouse with only a clerk and a pen, they became husband and wife. No flowers, no music, no family. It was just two people, signing a contract with too many questions and no time for answers. Clara moved into Liam's penthouse that same evening. It was cold and beautiful, full of expensive things but completely lifeless. He gave her a room, new clothes, and strict instructions. "We don't have to talk," he said plainly. "This is business." Clara nodded again. She didn't need promises. She needed shelter, safety, a second chance. Still, something strange stirred in the silence between them. Neither of them knew what it was, but it felt like the beginning of something neither had expected. Because sometimes, when two people have nothing left to lose, they end up finding something real. Even in a marriage born out of desperation, even between two strangers. The morning sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Liam Hartley's penthouse, casting a golden glow across marble floors and spotless glass. To Clara, it looked more like a museum than a home. Cold, clean, and impossibly quiet. She stood barefoot in the hallway, holding a steaming mug of coffee, unsure whether she was allowed to sit on the cream-colored furniture. Liam passed by her. Without a word, dressed sharply as always, phone already pressed to his ear. He barely acknowledged her presence as if she were just another part of the furniture. "Same schedule. Tell the board I'll be there at 9, he said into the phone, his tone clipped and professional. Then he walked out, the soft thud of the closing door echoing in the silence that followed. Clara let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The contract they'd signed was clear. She was to live there, have her own space, and receive a monthly allowance. But she was also to keep out of his way. There were no expectations beyond the legal arrangement, no friendship, no pretending. But as the hours passed, Clara couldn't help but feel like a ghost inside a crystal palace. She wandered the penthouse, amazed by how untouched everything felt. The walls were bare. The bookshelves were filled with business texts and law volumes, but not a single photograph. Not even of his family. It was as if Liam had built a fortress not just to keep people out, but to keep himself in. Still, she was determined to use this strange new beginning for something more. After all, she had been given a roof, a second chance, and some breathing room, something she hadn't had in years. So Clara started small. She found a small room with a desk and claimed it as her own. It had a view of the lake and just enough sunlight to remind her of better days. She brought in a few used books she'd saved from her old life. Books about writing, journalism, history. She had once been an excellent researcher, a writer who chased stories that mattered. She could still be that woman, she told herself. In the evenings, she cooked simple meals. Liam rarely joined her, but he noticed. One night, he came home later than usual and paused when he saw a warm plate waiting for him. "You didn't have to do this," he said, almost awkwardly. "I know," she replied. "I just thought you might be hungry." He nodded once, then sat down and ate in silence. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Days turned into weeks. Their conversations were short, often just polite greetings or quick questions. But slowly something shifted. Clara noticed how Liam always stood on the balcony at night, staring out at the city. He never smiled, never seemed relaxed. But she also saw the way his shoulders drooped slightly, as if he carried the weight of more than just his company. One evening, she brought him a blanket without a word and draped it over the balcony chair before walking back inside. He said nothing, but the next night, the blanket was neatly folded on the same chair, waiting. One afternoon, while Liam was at work, Clara explored a small storage room tucked away in a hallway. There, she found a few dusty boxes labeled Hartley, Family. Curiosity tugged at her. She hesitated but opened one. Inside were photo albums, newspaper clippings, and letters. There were pictures of a younger Liam, smiling, carefree, standing beside an older man with a proud smile. His father. She realized then that Liam hadn't always been cold. He had loved. He had lost. And maybe, just maybe, he was still grieving, in his own way. That night she left one photo, just one, on the living room shelf. A picture of Liam as a teenager, holding a trophy with his father clapping behind him. When Liam came home, he paused in front of the shelf. His expression tightened, and for a moment Clara thought she had crossed a line. But he didn't say anything. He simply stood there for a long time, looking at the photo. "Where did you find this?" he asked softly. "In one of the boxes," she replied gently. "I thought it deserved to be seen." He nodded again. "He used to be proud of me, before the company became more important than anything else." Clara didn't respond. She knew some wounds didn't need words, only time. From that moment, things began to change. They started having breakfast together, quiet, but shared. Sometimes Liam would ask about her past, and Clara would share small pieces, her love of writing, the betrayal that led to her career's fall, the years spent surviving one day at a time. In return, Liam revealed bits of himself too. He spoke of the pressure to live up to his father's legacy, of the fear of failure, of feeling constantly alone despite the crowd around him. They were still strangers in many ways, but now they were strangers walking the same path. One morning, Clara left a short note on the kitchen counter. For two people who didn't plan on anything real, were doing better than expected. Liam smiled when he read it. A real, quiet smile. And that was the moment something deeper began to take root, not romance, not yet, but trust. They hadn't planned for this. But sometimes bridges are built not in grand gestures, but in small, quiet steps. The days in the Hartley penthouse began to feel different. Less like a contract and more like a quiet routine. Liam and Clara weren't in love, at least not yet, but something honest was taking shape between them. They shared meals, exchanged ideas, and even learned to enjoy a few silent moments together without tension. But peace doesn't last forever, especially when the past refuses to stay buried. One rainy afternoon, Clara stood near the window, flipping through files Liam had asked her to look over. As part of her quiet return to research, she had started helping him with internal reports from Hartley Enterprises. The company was facing legal threats, shaky investors, and boardroom politics that could collapse it all if left unchecked. She read through one folder marked confidential. Something caught her eye. Documents related to a lawsuit involving Hartley Enterprises' media division. The story was oddly familiar. The same sources, the same headlines, even the same mysterious retractions that once destroyed her career. Her heart skipped. Could this be connected to what happened to her years ago? Before she could dig deeper, the doorbell rang. Clara opened the door to find a woman standing there, soaked from the rain, her umbrella bent from the wind. She had a sharp jawline, tired eyes, and a look that was half surprise, half disbelief. "Clara?" the woman asked, her voice cautious. Clara froze. "Elena." It had been years since she had seen Elena Moore, once her closest friend and fellow journalist. They had started together, grown together, and then everything had fallen apart. "Saw your name on a media file," Elena said. "I had to see for myself if it was really you." Liam stepped into the hallway just then, surprised to see a guest. Clara introduced them quickly, unsure how much to explain. After Elena dried off and settled in with tea, the three sat in the living room. The air was thick with memories. "I thought you were gone for good," Elena said softly, turning to Clara. "What happened back then? I tried to reach you, but you disappeared." Clara took a deep breath. "I didn't have a choice. After the story on the pharmaceutical fraud went sideways, I was blacklisted. I lost everything. You knew that." "I didn't know how bad it was," Elena admitted. "But I've been looking into it again, and I think there's more to it than we realized." That night after Elena left, Clara couldn't sleep. She sat in her makeshift office, staring at the files Liam had given her. Pieces of the puzzle were coming together. People, companies, and timelines that connected her downfall to the corruption now threatening Hartley Enterprises. She brought it up with Liam the next morning. "There's something going on beneath all this," Clara said. "Someone powerful tried to bury a story I wrote 5 years ago, and now I think they're trying to do the same here. With your company." Liam frowned, pulling up a chair. "You're saying this isn't just coincidence?" Clara shook her head. "No. I think it's the same people. Or at least, Someone with the same tactics. Liam rubbed his chin, processing. That would explain the recent attacks from inside the board. There's one name that keeps surfacing. In the background, Damien Cross. Who's that? Clara asked. He's been on the board for years, Liam explained. Always kept a low profile, but he's been quietly gathering support. And I just found out he's buying shares through shadow companies. Clara narrowed her eyes. He might be the connection. They decided to dig deeper, together. Clara reconnected with old sources. Some were hesitant, others too afraid to speak, but a few were still willing to help. She spent days in the quiet corners of the penthouse making calls, following trails, and linking names. Liam, though skeptical at first, started trusting her instincts. One evening, Clara returned from a meeting with a former editor. Her face was pale. "They know," she whispered as she entered. "Someone's been following me." Liam's expression turned to steel. "You're not going anywhere alone again." That night, the penthouse felt less like a home and more like a bunker. They double-checked the locks, shut the blinds, and tried to sleep, but sleep didn't come easy. The next morning, they woke to find the study ransacked. Papers were scattered, cabinets open, and Clara's laptop was missing. They were looking for something. Liam muttered, fury in his voice. They're getting desperate. But instead of pulling away, Clara and Liam grew closer. The fear didn't push them apart. It drew them in. Liam began opening up, telling her more about his father, the pressures of living up to the Hartley name, and how he never felt he had a choice in life. Clara shared stories from her career, how chasing the truth was once her only purpose. Now they had a shared mission: expose the truth and protect the company. In the middle of chaos, they found something rare: trust. Real, steady trust, and maybe even the beginnings of love. But danger was still circling. Damien Cross wasn't going to back down without a fight, and Clara's past, once buried, was now out in the open. Would they be strong enough to face what was coming? The shadows of the past had returned, but this time Clara wasn't alone. The morning after the break-in, Liam Hartley stood in the middle of the wrecked study, his jaw tight and his fists clenched. He had always been a man of control, steady, calculated, never rattled. But this was personal now. They had invaded his home. Worse, they had tried to scare Clara. Across the room, Clara sorted through the scattered papers, her hands calm, but her eyes alert. She was used to danger, had been chased by powerful people before, but this time was different. This time she wasn't fighting alone. Together, they had uncovered enough. Evidence linking Damien Cross to a string of dirty deals, shadow companies, and media cover-ups was now backed up, duplicated, and stored in safe places. Clara had spoken with whistleblowers and tracked money trails. Liam had used his position to quietly gather internal records. It was time to act. A week later, the boardroom at Hartley Enterprises was packed. Reporters waited outside. Security stood at every corner. The shareholders were anxious, unsure of what was about to unfold. Liam entered the room with Clara at his side, not hidden in the background, not silent, but right beside him. Some board members exchanged curious glances. Others looked nervous. "Thank you all for coming," Liam began. His voice was calm, but full of quiet power. "Today, we are not here to talk about projections or market trends. We are here to talk about the truth." He nodded to Clara, who stepped forward. "My name is Clara Hartley," she said, her voice clear and steady. "Some of you may know me from my past work in journalism. Others may only know me as Liam's wife. But today I am here as someone who has seen this company from the outside and now from the inside. What I discovered was a pattern of sabotage and corruption, led by one of your own." Gasps moved through the room. With confidence, Clara laid out the evidence. She showed documents, quoted emails, and played voice recordings. Every piece pointed back to Damien Cross. His plan had been to weaken the company's value, create a scandal, and buy out the remaining shares at a fraction of their worth. "I've been through this before," Clara said quietly. Years ago, I tried to expose a similar scheme. I was silenced, but not this time. By the time she finished, the boardroom was silent. Damien, red-faced and cornered, stood and tried to defend himself. But it was too late. The proof was undeniable. The board voted unanimously to remove him and launch a full investigation. News of the scandal spread fast. The media praised Clara's courage. Investors returned, and Hartley Enterprises began to rebuild its name. But the true victory didn't happen in a boardroom. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Liam and Clara sat on the balcony of their penthouse. The sky was painted in soft oranges and purples, and for once there was peace. "You were incredible today," Liam said, his voice low. "I was terrified," Clara admitted, smiling gently. "But I knew you were there." Liam took her hand, holding it with more emotion than words could express. "You've done more than save this company. You saved me. From a life I didn't even realize was empty." Clara looked at him, eyes soft. "You gave me a home again. A reason to fight. A place to believe in myself." A long silence passed between them. Not uncomfortable, just full of quiet understanding. Then, with a deep breath, Liam stood and pulled something from his pocket. It was a small velvet box. He didn't kneel, he didn't need to. "This started as a contract," he said, "but now I'm asking for something real. Clara, will you marry me again, this time for love?" Tears welled in Clara's eyes. She nodded, too emotional to speak. When she finally found her voice, she whispered, "Yes. For love. For forever." The weeks that followed brought more changes. Liam stepped back from day-to-day operations and appointed new leadership that believed in transparency. Clara founded an independent media initiative focused on investigative reporting, her dream rekindled with purpose and passion. The once cold and silent penthouse transformed into a home. There were now photos on the walls, music in the background, and the scent of fresh cooking in the air. Clara painted again. Liam laughed more. They hosted small dinners with friends and even visits from Clara's old colleagues who now saw her not as a fallen journalist, but as a survivor and a leader. And one more thing changed. The old bridge where Liam had first met Clara, lonely, forgotten, was restored by a community project they funded together. A plaque was placed there reading, "This is where stories begin, where hope finds a way home." Sometimes the future comes from the unlikeliest beginnings. Sometimes the path to love is through hardship. And sometimes two broken souls can build something whole, not because they're perfect, but because they choose to believe in each other. Liam and Clara didn't find each other in a fairy tale. They found each other in a storm, and from that storm they created something beautiful.